Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, March 1st, 2024, and this is episode 873 of Living Free in Tennessee. You can see I'm Redneckless here. That's because the Redneck insists on putting coffee right by my computer and getting a cup of coffee before we start these events. And then he sits there at the machine, having started 2 minutes before the event, and it takes 2 minutes and 30 seconds to get your cup of coffee. So you
Okay.
end up late on the show.
I tried.
You tried? Okay. Remember to talk in your outside voice while we're on this, please. All right. So today we're going to talk about changing our approach to the sheep and how we made that decision. We might have a little bit of the discussion today. We will also be talking about mindset in assessing homestead finances and kind of where we're coming from right now and how I might want to change it. And I don't know what that looks like exactly. So there'll be a lot of talky talk today. We have an influx of eggs finally. It's not a big influx, but it's an influx. And then the power of community in getting the things you need. That's all going to happen and more. Before we do that, though, I do want, we're doing the Million Satoshi giveaway today. Are you excited about that?
I heard about it.
It's actually more exciting than it was when I came up with the idea because Bitcoin is now at like $50,000.
Yeah.
So anyway, our featured event today is the Self-Reliance Festival. Today is your last day to get early bird pricing for Self-Reliance Festival tickets. So if you're going to come, I'd grab those tickets today. There are also discounts on the pre-event workshops. We're actually adding 2 more workshops to the event. They're not going to have early bird pricing. They're just going to have pricing, but we've got a 2-day butchering workshop coming in that's going to go into curing meats. It's a higher ticket price item, but we also found a really good presenter for that. And we only have 10 spots in that class, period, end of story. We also have an herbalism class that's a 2-hour workshop right after the Fight Like a Girl workshop. So if you do fight like a girl, you can do the herbalism one too. We did that on purpose. That one's got like a $75 price tag, which is not a terrible add-on. So those are all coming to selfreliancefestival.com. Get your tickets now. Don't let all of the excuses keep you from developing a powerful community, guys. And the only way to do that is in person at events like Self-Reliance Festival. I also have 2 sponsors today. The first one, you know who it is?
No.
It's Discount Mylar Bags. Why do we love them?
Coffee.
We love them because of coffee, but we also love them because they help me package food that I have freeze-dried in my camper in a way that I know will keep it fresh so that when I need it, I can use it. They have all sorts of advice on their website, discountmylarbags.com, on how to store food. And you don't have to have a freeze dryer to use a Mylar bag, guys. Maybe you're just storing wheat berries or something else. They've got all sorts of advice on how to do that, how to size your O2 absorbers, and that's all available for free. They also pass on the savings that they get on sourcing Mylar bags in bulk to you. Discountmylarbags.com. Our second sponsor of today's show is one I added because of my own selfish reasons, and that is okay. So you guys hear me burst into song on these podcast episodes, right? Right? Yes. Oh, I forgot to tell Instagram to go live, by the way. It also forgot we were going live. So we're not going to go live on Instagram because it failed. Probably because I did a browser update. So Instagram's live streaming is a pain in the butt, guys. Just FYI. So if you want to see me on Instagram, sucks to be you. Anyway, I like to burst into song. Did you know I sing in a choir? You know I sing in a choir.
Yeah.
Does it annoy you?
No.
No. Does it make you sad on Mondays when it's like you're on your own, bud? Because I'm not here to cook dinner? A little bit. Anyway, my choir does a concert every winter called Unity in the Community. And the reason that they do this is that the power of music can bring people together to put aside their differences to just focus on what's most important in the world. And I know that sounds very hoity-toity, but it's also true. Like we spend a lot of time, it's very easy in the programming that is in our society today to be more worried about how we're different than people versus how we're the same. And this year, so it's always a different topic. Last year, they were doing all female composers. And one year we did focusing on the power of children and all of these different things. So this year, they decided to focus on gospel music. Now,
Okay.
imagine a classical choir filled with people who are not in their youngest years singing gospel music. Do you think that's going to be stellar?
Yes.
Does it seem a little weird? A lot of people thought that seemed weird, but here's what we also do. We reach out to other choirs and we bring together multiple voices from different places all over the state of Tennessee. A couple times, I think we've gone even out of the state of Tennessee. This time, we have the Cordova Singers. It's a high school choir out of Memphis, Tennessee. And they're not just any high school choir guys. Like, these guys are destined to be, like, the people who sing in this choir have what it takes to be professional singers already. And that is something that I've heard this choir before, and they're amazing. And we also have TTU's Tech Chorale. We're going to have 250 voices on stage singing music this weekend, Sunday at 3 p.m. mastersingersinc.com to get your tickets. It is at Tennessee Tech University in the auditorium at the Wattenberger auditorium, and it is $15 a ticket. And if you do not get your ticket today, Friday, you will not get your ticket till you buy it at the door there. But I mean, if I was going to go see choir music and I'm local to Cookeville, Tennessee, man, I would check that out. All right. With that, we're going to go straight into our first segment, which is forage. What kind of plants have you been foraging?
I haven't been foraging anything.
He's been foraging ram plants. However, I was out with my dogs yesterday on a walk. And so there's lots of stuff available right now. I'm not going to list everything available right now. Like, I'll feature a couple things this week. And I was up. I usually go to the upper ruin with them, but they like ran straight to the lower ruin. And the upper ruin is further from my house, so it gives me like a better uphill climb when I'm wanting to get some exercise. But I was like, okay, I'll go check out the lower ruin. I haven't been there in a while. And sure enough, the stinging nettle is perfect this week for harvesting. Now, you may think, stinging nettle, like, why would I harvest that? Well, it's a pretty good tea, especially for a woman of my particular age. It does have a decent amount of vitamin D in it, although it's not going to replace all your vitamin D. And it also makes a delicious soup. So I harvested it, and I didn't have gloves with me. I actually can't currently feel these 3 fingers, and I don't know if it's carpal tunnel or because I very carefully didn't get stung by the stinging nettle, and then I was less careful in my kitchen, and I did get stung by it a little bit. I don't find the sting of stinging nettle to be all that bothersome unless I get a lot of it. Like, one little prick doesn't bother me, but like, if it was my whole arm, that would probably bother me. So, and usually stinging nettle stings last for, 45 minutes or an hour or something. It's not usually that bad unless you have some sort of an allergy. But as I said, it's interesting that the feeling in the finger where I got stung is just gone. Like, it's sort of pins and needly. And I always wonder, like, if I had a burn on my finger and I'd put stinging nettle on it, would it then result in this? Would it like bring back the burn sensation? Anyway,
You can experiment with that. I don't intend to.
I don't usually have burns, guys, so who knows? I've actually read online that it has been used that way.
Okay.
He's like, okay, do you like stinging nettle?
Here's how the redneck finds stinging nettle. The redneck is out doing something else, and all of a sudden the entire side of my leg is on fire.
We have a really nice stinging nettle patch around one of the trees in our pathway to the back campground area. I harvested some from there too. Don't kill it. Okay, so that's out there. And what you do, like, if you have gloves on, then you won't get stung. And is it true that if you grasp the nettle firmly, then it won't sting? No, it's not true. But if you carefully look at the direction the spikes are going, you can like find places to touch it without getting stung. And, I will say this. The first time I ever ate stinging nettle, I made a stinging nettle soup. And the way you do that is sort of like, it's similar to making watercress like soup. You puree it after heating it with like a bone broth or something, and it's delicious. I add a little garlic. And I took the first bite, and like the mental struggle from spoon to mouth, because I wasn't sure that I wasn't going to have stinging nettle explode all up in my mouth, because I'd read and it's like once you heat it, the sting is gone. But then like sometimes you read things and it's somebody wrote that in theory, but they didn't do it in practice. And then you're unpleasantly surprised. But I was pleasantly surprised. And then I learned about when you dry it, it also stops stinging you. So like right now, I have all the stinging nettle I need for winter tea drying on a platter in the kitchen, except for the tea I made that was fresh yesterday. Did you know you ate stinging nettle yesterday?
No.
It was in your tea.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the risk of being around me and having tea, is I'll throw herbal stuff in that. Okay. Dandelion has been really speaking to me this week. I've been seeing a lot of the greens. I'm probably going to go find some greens and do some things with some greens on the dandelion side. And then I'm really expecting mushrooms to be up. I haven't found any oyster mushrooms this winter at all. And I've been in the woods looking for them. I haven't even found like, wow, you're too old to harvest one. So I don't know what's up with that. Hopefully they'll pop out. And also on March 7th, 2020, I found morels for the first time and last time in my life. So I'm keeping my eye out for morels right now. It's a little early in the season for it, but it's about time. And now we're going to get like 20 days of rain in a row. So I'll probably find mushrooms. We'll see. The key to finding mushrooms is to get outside into places where mushrooms grow, and eventually you find mushrooms. But if you don't time your finding of the mushrooms with the bloom of the mushrooms, then you don't. So last year, with my schedule the way it was and me walking where I was walking, I found a lot fewer mushrooms. And so I've really made a concerted effort this year to be in the woods. So that's where I'm at with forage. The poison hemlock is about 6 inches tall now in places. I was over at the pasture yesterday and I saw it was about 6 inches tall. So it's time to actually think about how we're going to beat some of that back so that it doesn't go to seed, and eventually reduce the amount of poison hemlock growing in the pasture. We also have ditchweed hemlock. So
where?
All along the road. All along the road. Yeah, especially down by the pasture. There's like a whole patch. So it probably would be nice to have more than one weed whacker in the holler for this, but we'll see. So our plan with the hemlock is just to chop and drop it. It's not likely that the sheep will eat it, but we really don't want them to eat it. And this time of year, because forage is low, is when they might eat it. I actually was talking with Ryan Steva yesterday, and he said, those plants that poison things when they're young don't always pack the punch. Like they usually develop the poisons in the more mature phases, sort of like pokeweed and all of those other things. But I'm not going to count on that. So don't go out and eat poison hemlock because I said that, guys, because you could die. But it's, people, I saw somebody find some poison hemlock near where their kids play, and they were really freaked out about it and afraid to touch it. And the thing is, it can cause your skin to be like sensitive to solar, or to break out in a rash if you get the juices on your skin. But if you see it and want to get rid of it, you can glove up and get rid of it. It's not like even touching it through gloves is going to kill you. It's not that kind of a thing. Like you don't have to eat a lot of it for it to be terminal, but you would have to absorb an awful lot through your skin to even get to the toxicity levels. And so being cognizant of what you're doing when you find poison hemlock is a good idea. And that is the way. Like I would much rather handle poison hemlock than a black widow spider. How about you?
Sure.
And a black widow spider is not going to kill me, probably. Like they could if I was allergic, but they're just going to make me really unhappy about the fact I got bitten by it if I get bitten by it. Also, a black widow spider is not going to seek you out and bite you, but that's a totally different topic for a totally different day. I will tell you this. I'm not usually scared of spiders, but black widows are very intimidating looking. And so they're like the badass of the, like more intimidating than tarantulas to be like, they're all shiny and sleek and they got the red and they're like, and they look angry, even though they're not.
I don't mind black widows because they're easy to identify and I usually don't find them. The recluse, on the other hand, I find what I think are brown recluse around here all the time.
Yeah, so the recluse doesn't bother me at all because they're little and they run away. The black widow also runs away, but she is just, they're big. I haven't seen a black widow here since I lived here. Now that I've said that, I've cursed myself, haven't I? They are, they live in Tennessee, but I just like, when I lived in Southern Oregon, I got porch widows all the time.
Same in the South.
Yeah, like I remember like coming out and there'd be a porch widow, and then I would spend the next 3 days scheming how I was going to get rid of this black widow because I didn't want her on my porch. And they would come back in the same places, I think, because they reproduce. So, yeah, I had a lot more interactions with black widows when I lived in Oregon than here. And that's, and almost no interactions with recluses in Oregon. And then here I know people who've actually gotten bitten by them. But the key is, guys, don't just go putting your hand places you can't see. That's a good way to touch things you don't want to touch, right?
Yeah.
Just words to live by from Nicole Sauce. Our next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about the critters on the farm. And our first discussion is going to be a bit of a reenactment of a conversation we had yesterday. You don't have to say what you said, but we're just going to have the talk again.
Okay.
Why do we do what we do?
Food.
Okay, elaborate on that.
For me, it's growing as much of our food as possible, sell the surplus, and I get a certain sense of peace being out here and dealing with the livestock. I actually had a conversation with somebody a while back about it seems like the longer that I'm out here, the more infuriating it is to have to go to town. And I finally realized that it's because this is like the way people are supposed to live. So I need to go to town today, and I really don't want to.
Where are you going?
I need to go to Cookville.
Can it wait a day?
Maybe.
Okay. I'm going to Cookville tomorrow.
Okay.
But if you go today, I have coffee inserts I need.
Okay.
So that's the other thing is every time somebody goes to town, everybody's like, I also need you to stop these 7 places and get me things. So the reason I live this way is it's a closer connection with the land. And I think that going back to a more simple living approach, not that I've achieved that to the degree I'd like to, is healthier mentally and physically. And then why do we have sheep? Meat. Is it for meat for the world or is it for meat for us?
Mostly for us.
So our financial goal with the sheep is that they keep us from needing to buy meat at the store or from other farmers and provide us with a grass-fed ruminant that is raised in a healthy way so we know where our food comes from and we have food resilience because they regenerate. Right?
Yep.
Does that mean we need to earn $30,000 or $80,000 a year on sheep?
No.
So the last 2 weeks, what have we spent most of our time on with the sheep?
Chasing sheep.
Why are we chasing sheep?
I was thinking about that last night, and I'm not really sure what sparked this little insurrection.
I think Rams changing roles has sparked the latest insurrection, and ewes going into heat.
Yeah.
So the ewes that are not about to give birth are in heat, probably based on signs. And the rams are ridiculous. And the other thing I saw them do is when the paddock food is getting low, they jump the fence to go get the food they want.
Yeah.
Even though there's, and this time of year, we just like, we keep them on paddocks 3 to 7 days with augmented hay so that for the pest like control part, the parasite control. And that means like the last day or two on the paddock, they're like, man, we're sick of this hay stuff. We want that fresh green stuff right over there. Like the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah, and
that's where that comes from, I'm sure.
That's literally a factor, but this is well above and beyond just the food drive for them.
So Sunday I didn't get to go swimming because I was chasing rams.
I think that was the second time that day.
Yeah. And I can't remember if that's the day we moved Timmy over here the first time. I don't think it was. But maybe it was. So then he got a fairly Fort Knoxy, but not quite Fort Knoxy enough paddock over here for Timmy the ram. Right now, I'm not concerned about getting the ones who are not about to give birth pregnant, because actually I want to move everybody towards exposure in late August, September.
Yeah.
So like that's, and we have enough lamb in the freezer at the moment. So I wanted to get into a more mechanized schedule on the births rather than just let whatever, whenever. And after spending as much time as we have spent in the last 7 days chasing rams, I'm wondering why I even have rams. I mean, I know why.
Yeah.
But like, so after talking, I'm pretty sure our decision is no more rams on the property. And he was like, but I want to keep rams unless we find, because then we'll bring in rams twice a year to impregnate the girls.
Yeah. I ultimately would like to have a pair of rams. However, at least for the foreseeable future, if I can find a reliable source to bring rams in, like there's a certain level of, I had one ram that was literally out of like 12, 14 sheep, he was 90% of the problems and he had to go. But there's also a certain aspect of, I mean, I think with any flock, your rams are going to be 90% of your problems.
Yeah.
And so, like, when we had the rams over here, there was problems with rams getting out, but there wasn't really any problems with the girls getting out.
Yeah, because the girls were over there and they're content. So it's a different demeanor. Ken's asking what it would look like to have one ram. It would look like if one ram died that we wouldn't have a second ram, but that's actually not necessarily a bad thing. We could have a ram and a wether for it to have a companion animal, or I can pay a local farmer to let me borrow a ram for 35 days twice a year. It'll cost about the same as keeping the ram costs right now. And we don't take care of that ram on the in-between times. So we'll talk more about what I found, but we did make the decision to process the rams that are left right now. And that same day we made the decision, I got a text from Chef Brett saying, do you have any sheep coming available? And I did. I was gonna process Cloudy, but with the ram change, I don't need to process Cloudy. So she's now gonna stay here. We're gonna breed her. And so I sold the one. So we have one ram that's been around a while who's going to be Ramburger. And then the other one is about 6 months old, and I want him to go just a little bit longer to get a little bit bigger. So we're processing in about a week, one ram, and then the other ram we'll fatten the little guy up, and he'll be going to Chef Brett, who just wants 2 halves of a ram to show somebody how to butcher. Yeah. So it's interesting how like we made the decision and I instantly got a text message from Brett. It was like, do you have a camera in my house?
Yeah.
The older ram I'm gonna do mostly ground lamb because it's a little bit different flavor when they're older, and the meat is not as tender. Let's put it that way. So ground lamb it is, and that's fine. Uh, I actually, when I'm selling lamb, people want ground out of everything the most. They want lamb chops, ground. They don't really want the roasts or the other things. So A Rape here wants to know, did you replant your pastures, or are you just feeding them on native grass? We are feeding them on the grass in the pasture, which is not 100% native. Like, it was a pasture for horses and cattle before and had been seeded. And I think we threw some Timothy seed out. Yeah.
I've thrown some Timothy seed out, and then in some specific areas this year, I threw another type of fescue out that's supposed to do well in shaded areas. But other than that, it's just whatever was pre-existing in the pasture. And I try to, like, it's been a struggle with the weeds there, but now we're getting good grass coming in. So periodically I will go through an area, particularly if it's a little bit thin on the grass side. And before I put the sheep there, I'll cut the heads of the grass off so that it reseeds.
So one of the things about regenerative farming practices is that you can tap into what's already there if you follow some basic tenets. And I had a talk with a local veterinarian, gosh, like 6 years ago. He was really excited when he figured out I was into permaculture, but I didn't use the P word in an article I wrote for a paper. And he called me and he told me how he's a regenerative farmer as well as veterinarian. And he's like, I do a workshop every September for other veterinarians to show them how rotating intensive grazing and rotating cattle allows you to tap into your local seed bank for what they need. And the difference is you're not just letting them run on 250 acres, you're moving them every single day to a smaller area, which is basically like, we don't do it every day, but that's what we do with the sheep. And so what's coming back, like through the process of the sheep tending the pasture, what's coming back in is good for the sheep. It's almost like there's a bigger picture plan from nature for this to happen.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. So that's why it's like, other sheep farmers in the area don't necessarily do the regenerative approach. They are medicating to keep the parasites down. They aren't rotating as much. Like, there's all sorts of stuff. But there are some regenerative sheep farmers around us, which is good. One of them's going out of business, though. Peaceful Pastures is closing. And that's like, she's been at it for 30 years. Her husband died of a heart attack suddenly this fall. She'll be selling the rest of their livestock, but she said our transition plan always was, if one of us went, we close operations down because we need the two of us to do it.
Yeah.
So they made that announcement. I don't know if somebody else is going to come fill that void, but that's somebody who has been raising animals right for 30 years in the Salatin method. Like, she's a badass. And yeah, when I saw her make that post, I was like, man, that's too bad, because that was one of our backup places. Like, if we can't grow it or if we fail, we could always buy from Peaceful Pastures. And in fact, a couple times a year, we did buy with Peaceful Pastures. Is that something you want to read?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
I was looking at clearing the brambles.
So Strong Roots Resources says, my brother cleared 2,000 square feet of brambles and pear yesterday. Looking forward to seeing what we can replace there with grazing practices. So that was a manual clearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, more to be cleared. We've put sheep on some pretty brambly areas, and they don't totally fix it, but they do help.
Yeah. And
goats would help more with that.
If you stay on it, then it's not that hard to beat it back, but you've got to stay on it for a season or, a cycle.
So tell them how you tricked baby ram into going on a leash. By the way, sheep don't love being on leashes, just for the record.
Yeah, and this one didn't like being handled at all. And we got a collar on him, what, day before yesterday?
It was day before yesterday, yeah.
And so he was already in a mode of, I want nothing to do with you. And you try to get anywhere close to him, and he would just go around the rest of the flock or around the dog shed.
Hide behind his mom.
Yeah, just anything to get away from you. So I put pellets out to put everybody to bed last night. And he was playing the same game. But I had my back to one of the bowls that had pellets in it, and he came up behind me and started eating out of that one. So I just kept my back to him and slowly just take a step back, managed to get close enough that I could basically just turn and drop and come down on top of him, and just, they've still got their winter hair on, so just grab 2 tufts of hair and drop straight to the ground and managed to pin him down. And I had the leash in my pocket, so I managed to get it out and get it clipped on. And then when I got up, he got up like a rodeo bronco horse and just started jumping, flailing like somebody was trying to ride him. It was actually kind of amusing for like 10 seconds.
And then there was a pain in the butt.
And then I had to get him all the way down the hill with him doing that pretty much the entire way down the hill, with the exception of the time that he decided to fall on the ground like a 3-year-old throwing a temper tantrum.
Oh, no, he did that to me too.
Yeah.
He was like,
yeah, just legs straight out,
like, yeah.
went limp. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's not going to help you in this situation.
Yeah. So here's what I did. I was like, my back hurts. It's been a really intense day. I'm going to do Pilates. He's like, I'm going to put the sheep to bed. And I am 10 minutes into Pilates, which is a 30-minute class. And I hear on my phone that he's got the ram. And he didn't say, I need your help. He said, he's a pain in the butt. I'm going to try to wrestle him down. And I took that to mean, if you're not explicitly asking for help, Nicole is finishing her Pilates class. So then I'm totally in a downward dog with my butt up in the air towards the door, and Nighthawk walks in. He's like, that's not what I was expecting to see. Because he brought over 2 things of caulking so I can do the windows. And I was like, you might want to reach out to Tactical and see if he needs help with this ram, because I am not stopping Pilates unless it's an emergency at this point, because I have to make space for my own health. And so I finished Pilates, and then I'm like, hey, Tactical, what's with the ram? Because I was expecting to see the ram down here. He's like, I have him closed up in the box, which is like this training area that's 20 feet by 20 feet. And he's like, I'm like, do you want to bring him down? He's like, I'm not bringing him down. You can try. He was a bucking Bronto. And I was like, okay. I go over there. I got Nighthawk to come over and pick me up so I could get there faster because the sun was setting. And I didn't want to bring a 4-wheeler over, leave it, walk the sheep back. And then I leash walked this guy back, and he was actually like, he did like all of these jumpy things at first, and then he got over himself. And then I'd have to pull him, and sometimes he'd go like flat, legs out, like, you can just drag me along. And I dragged him once, and it made him choke. And I was like, I'll just wait till he stands up again, because I can out stubborn a ram for sure. Yeah. And so then he'd go, and then he'd be like, oh, she's not fighting me. Now what would I do? And then he'd get up. And I finally figured out if I was next to him or a little behind him, he'd run ahead of me. And that worked pretty well. And by the end of it, he was actually kind of more oriented on how a ram should behave on a leash. And then he saw Timmy, and they started calling to each other. And then he was like pulling me to Timmy. So like once he figured out he was going somewhere familiar, or to something familiar, he was actually basically fine. The problem was I had to hold him back long enough for Tactical to open the gate because I was having trouble opening the gate while holding him. He was so excited to see Timmy. And then he ran in and they were super happy.
My goal was just to get him into a hard fenced area, which of course they're at the top of the hill right now. So that meant I had to get him all the way down the hill, and then I had to turn around and walk all the way back up the hill to go get the four-wheeler that I was on when I went up there the first time.
Yep, that's absolutely true. Joshua, thanks for the compliment. Question, do you have a video you use for Pilates? I use a channel called Move by Nicole, and it's just a fluke that she has my name. And the way I found her YouTube channel is I was at Exit and Build Land Summit trying to figure out how to get 2 workouts in a day during 75 hard. And I was getting up really early and going for a 45-minute walk. And then at lunchtime, instead of eating lunch, I came back to the Airbnb to work out, but it didn't have workout equipment. So I was like, I either have to run in place. And then I was like, well, maybe there's something on YouTube, like some sort of a class. And I popped up YouTube. And of course, Big Brother is probably listening. It suggested her channel to me. I was like, oh yeah, I used to love doing Pilates. So I did a 30-minute Pilates class and then added calisthenics for the last 15 minutes. And after doing that one Pilates class, my low back felt better. And I was like, oh, if you have core strength, your back doesn't hurt as much. So then I started doing Pilates more. I fell out of that habit this fall, and I'm super stoked to be back in it. So my goal is 3 Pilates classes a week. I've only done 2 this week, but every time I do it, I feel better. And at this point, I did her beginning series. But at this point, I just do any Pilates class. Like, I guess I haven't done an advanced one. I'm doing sort of normal level Pilates, but I don't always succeed in the moves I'm supposed to do. And when Nighthawk walked in, it was like downward dog and then lift up a hand and a foot, and like you have to balance. And then he's talking to me. So that was funny. That's okay. So, yeah. So goats are similar to sheep, according to Ken. Our ram, who died recently, wasn't too bad because we started him on a leash at a few weeks old. Yeah. So what I have thought about this whole week is that I keep saying I'm going to handle babies more, and I keep not handling the babies, and we need to handle the babies more. We might even need to separate babies from mamas to really get them a little more handleable. And the thing is this, a lot of sheep farmers don't want them friendly because they want them leery because they're less likely to get attacked. Right? Or they're more likely to run. I'm coming to another perspective on that. Like, I want more friendly sheep. I have dogs guarding them, and it would be a lot better if, like the goats, they'd walk up to me and let me pet them.
Yeah.
Like, because I can trick Clover into doing what I want, or to getting to where I can catch her really easily, because if she's like doing a runaway, I just pretend like something interesting's over here, and she's like, what's that? Because they're really curious. And then I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah. And it's been my experience with any animal that, like with the rams, they don't like being on a leash because every time they've been on a leash, they're going to some form of hard fence jail. The goats, on the other hand, don't mind because the goats go on a leash to go out on the property somewhere else and get to eat.
Yeah, we tether them. So that is true. Well, and I've walked her all over the place. So that's when I'm walking the sheep. I actually usually stop at places where I think they'll like the food.
Yeah.
And that works great with Timmy. But the young one was like, I'm not interested. I just want off this leash, and you're scary. Although I was petting him all along the way. And yesterday when I got him in with Timmy, I was petting him and he wasn't running away, so maybe he's learned to like that. We'll see. We're getting 5 duck eggs a day now. We put the ducks in duck jail for 3 or 4 days, which just means they had access to their yard only. A couple of them got out, but whatever. And we started getting eggs in the coop again. And you got one by the pond yesterday, but in general, in the coop. And so now they're out of duck jail again.
Yeah.
And we're eating duck eggs, which is the whole purpose of the ducks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the chickens are giving us 4 eggs a day, but one of them is in a location where I don't want them laying. So we'll deal with that. It's also time to reset the chicken coop.
Yes.
And I keep not like, here's what my toolbox fallacy is on this. I want to like strap up a tarp under that door that opens to help catch it and like push it down the chute into a wheelbarrow. And what I could do is just put the wheelbarrow on one side and push out on that side. And now that I say that out loud, it's going to be easier for me to do that. And I actually went over there one day with the intention of starting that, then went to look for a tarp, then got interrupted by chasing sheep. And then the wheelbarrow with the rake in it sat by the chicken coop for 3 days. Remember that? Did you wonder why that was there?
Yeah.
That's why that was there. Because I had done the duck coop where I'm adding wood chips and like using the rake to rough them up a little bit for the deep litter method. And I was like, oh, well, while I'm at the coop thing, I'll go over and work on the duck coop and then it'll be done. And then I got interrupted.
See, my toolbox fallacy is the fact that all of my trash cans that I use to move the litter are still full of duck litter.
You want to put that on the Saturday to-do list?
Okay.
Because I need to go get wood chips too. And I only have until 1 p.m. Saturday.
Okay.
Because I have the longest dress rehearsal in history, except for that time we went to Carnegie.
Okay.
Carnegie was like 8-hour rehearsal days. That was fun. That was a lot of rehearsal. Just for the record.
Nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got a 6-hour rehearsal. Wait. I have a 5-hour rehearsal on Saturday for the Sunday concert. So, yeah. Okay. Next up, we have grow. This is where we talk about what we're growing on the property. As you can imagine, chasing sheep and growing vegetables are two mutually exclusive things.
Yeah.
So I still haven't gotten my seedlings started, but my shelves are inside, which means I can just plug them in and put them on a timer. So that part's done. I just need to put soil in the things and seeds in the soil. And I keep saying I'm going to do that. And then I keep having things happen or phone calls or all the other things. So lots of excuses why I haven't done that. It's rainy today. It might actually happen. So today I had a bookkeeping meltdown this week. And I am redoing all of the tax coding for 2022 and 23 in a manual way because the automated way failed me. And it's important for me to get it as close to correct as possible so that, I keep as much of my money in my pocket as I can, A. B, if I were to get audited, at least it would be semi-accurate, right? Well, it'll be accurate. Like here's how I do that. If something's questionable, I actually don't use it as a write-off. And then I figure if I ever get audited and they disagree with something, I'll have like in my back pocket 10 other things. Hopefully that never happens though. But with that meltdown today, the rest of the day, I'm organizing by setting a timer, spending an hour on that coding, and then spending breaks doing Homestead projects. Usually Friday afternoons are dedicated all to Homestead projects. That's why we have this stream in the morning. It's so we can get done with it. And then I can be like, okay, this is the Homestead project for the afternoon. Today I have a Self-Reliance Festival call and the taxes, and then everything else is Homestead related. My peas have not germinated yet, which is good. That is actually pretty good because that means that they haven't frosted because we had a couple cold days, but now we don't have anything near freezing for a week. That also means it's a really good time to collect IMO. So we'll see if that may be one of my Homestead projects today. And then my Swiss chard, which I put in this time last year, it's coming back. So it's looking good. It's in the aquaponics system. The aquaponics system is back up and running completely. Like we disconnect the wicking beds and drain them for the winter. Every winter, we hook those back up so that the nutrient would go to the Swiss chard, and it's working great. So I should have Swiss chard on the menu this coming week. Next up is Holler Neighbors / community. And as you can imagine, chasing sheep is a neighborhood activity. And so more than once this week, I've been on Zello like, hey guys, we need to get the sheep, or so I called Steve once and he was ready to drop everything and help. And then we managed to get things under control on Sunday. So that's happened. And then Nighthawk's has been involved in chasing sheep a lot. And it is really nice to have that resource when two of you aren't enough. So if you can have friends nearby on your homestead, that does make it way easier. The other thing is with the decision for the ram to process, we realized that we need to find another ram locally. And he was really hesitant to process rams without having another source. And I'm like, listen, the male animal on any farm is destined for the butcher, so it's not usually hard to find one. At the same time, I'm a little concerned about bringing rams in who have had a lot of antibiotics or other things, because we have purposefully bred or continued, like Dawn Sutton started this, but we've continued like keeping those genetics strong for parasite resistance, disease resistance. Like that's what we want. So I remembered that because I've been to the Spencer Mutual Assistant Group meeting, I know a dude named Randy, and he's been to Self-Reliance Festival too. And he lives really close to where my P.O. box is. And I was like, well, he's kind of close. So I'm going to ask him if he knows anybody who keeps sheep who rents rams. Because I also know that over by him somewhere, I don't know where, is a St. Croix farm. And I think that person might actually raise his sheep the way we raise ours, because why else would you have that breed of sheep?
Yeah.
So, because they aren't, they aren't as big as Katahdin. Like there's a whole thing. Like when you mix a St. Croix and a Katahdin, you actually get a hybrid that can be a bigger meat animal, but they're not the largest sheep in the world. That's, that's the deal. So I asked him, and he's like, well, I'll talk to my buddy who has sheep and let you know. And I was like, great, let me know. And so it turns out that there is somebody who's been raising St. Croix near me, like within 20 minutes of me, for decades, to be as parasite and disease resistant as possible, doesn't use antibiotics or any of the other stuff like we do with ours.
Yeah.
And rotates them. And so we're talking about the kind of genetics I'm interested in. And so I don't know if that's going to turn into we're able to rent a ram, because the thing about renting your ram when you have genetics like that is you also don't want to send your ram somewhere and have it get exposed to something. So we'll keep in communication, but I'm kind of excited about it. Like, even if I have to buy a ram, he does what he does and then he gets processed. That means we don't keep the ram around. So we'll see. We'll go from there. But had I not taken the step that I took a few years ago to be purposeful about at least 4 or 5 times a year getting out of my sort of local network bubble or my LFTN network bubble and go to other things that aren't technically LFTN and met this person in person, I don't think that would have gone anywhere. I would have been like, I'm going to go on Google and Google St. Croix, or I'm going to look on Facebook Marketplace, or all of these things. Like, I'm going to go to the farmer's market and see if anybody has sheep. I probably would have come across a more conventional sheep farmer. Or I would have had to see if Ken Berry has a ram I can buy from his farm, sort of thing, like go way out of the area. But having something 20 minutes from here is great. And speaking of sheep, do you have any resources you recommend before getting sheep? Looking to add them to the homestead probably next year, and I want to be prepared. Books, YouTube channels, etc. So Greg Judy's channel is a great way to start learning about sheep, but understand, and this is something he and I talked about, Greg Judy has a vast property and enough financial wherewithal to have a large herd and be not in a terrible position when he shoots a ram for jumping the fence.
Yeah.
If you only have 2 rams and you shoot a ram for jumping a fence, you have and you don't eat the meat, like that's a huge waste. That's like a month or two's worth of food. So we actually, here's what I think is, I do like sort of the stun method on livestock. Like, I want the genetics of my livestock to be strong, but because we are operating at such a small scale, I'm actually willing to put more into saving animals. They just don't get to pass their genes on when that happens, when something happens, because I want to get them to where I can process them and eat them rather than put all that time in and then I can't eat them. And the 2 ways that I won't be able to eat them is, 1, they get a disease or something, Ooh, thumbs up. So one, they get a disease or something, and I don't want to eat that meat because I'm actually not confident that eating meat that I know has a viral infection is good for you. So I just don't do it. And then two, um, they just may not make it. Like they might die and they've been dead for a while, like whatever. I mean, I guess we see the sheep enough that wouldn't really happen, but if something just drops dead, like, do you really want to eat the meat? So I really want genetically strong animals. If they're sick, I'll nurse them through. Like the first year we had the sheep, one of them got a brain infection and we gave him antibiotics. And then we waited 60 days and then we processed him and we did not only we ate that meat. We didn't serve it to guests. We didn't sell it or anything else. We just, that was personal use because it had once had antibiotics. So yeah, anyway, that's so Greg Judy's a good place to start. The American Association of Sheep or something, ASI, I think, has a big manual that I just got about references for sheep. And then I have a couple reference manuals on the bookshelf that you're in my way of getting right now. Can you go bring the 2 sheep books? So I'll tell you what books. So the books I have for sheep were given to me, permanent loan to me until she has sheep again by Dawn. And these are helpful for troubleshooting things. I think the other thing is, I think we're going to do more sheep content because I realized that most of the quote unquote good sheep content is I hate the word sheep. It's like plural and singular at the same time. So the sheep content is oriented towards larger herds. And so when you have 2 or 3, it's a totally different thing. And when you're on a homestead scale with weird terrain, it's not all flat. It's a totally different thing. And I want to share that story. So this is the Sheep Production Handbook, which is going to be a more conventional method, but can help you with disease troubleshooting. That's the one I just got. This one's hard to come by. Laura Lawson, Managing Your Ewe. So this one's super expensive when you find it. And then this one is also Laura Lawson, Lamb Problems. So this is about young. So those are the reference books I have. I haven't found a great reference for managing your flock of 5 ewes in a regenerative way. And I'm sure it's out there. If somebody finds something I should check out, I'm always into learning about sheep. I found a farmer in Tennessee who is willing, he's been raising sheep for 20 years, and he's willing to let us come out and do some more of the sheep first aid sort of stuff. His wife is a veterinarian, and one of the things, there are 2 things that come up with sheep that it's you're like, do I really want to do this? One is if they have bloat and you have to do surgery on the rumen, you basically like a balloon, you pop a hole in it with a special needle in it, and the air goes, because what's happening when they get bloat is that they are fermenting in their rumen and it's releasing gas and they can't burp. So there's lots of things you can do before it gets to the point where the pressure of the size of their rumen is keeping them from being able to get oxygen. But if they're beyond that, then poking this hole makes a big difference. And this happened actually to one of our local friends who also has a small flock of sheep. And I was, I was kind of talking her through what to do with drenching and burping. And I was like, and you need to call a vet right now if you can get one out, because you may need to save the animal. You may need to poke a hole. And if you can't get a vet, you may need to poke the hole. And none of us know how to poke the hole. So I'm sure they're not going to let us do that to an animal that doesn't have bloat, but they are going to show us how to give an intravenous shot. Like when you need to get something straight into the bloodstream, how you find the vein, and let us try to do that. He said he had a couple sheep that can be pin cushions for us, like their demeanor is good. And that's something that I'm excited about. I'm trying to figure, we can film that. I'm trying to figure out if I can bring another farmer with me who I think who's the one who had to have the vet out, who I think would benefit from that thing if they have time. But it's like, and that's all from community connections, guys. It is all from community connections. Like, I found this farmer through Brett. I know Brett because of Liberty on the Rocks, which is a monthly meetup in Nashville, right? And it's all about getting out and meeting people, man. Even if you're an introvert, it's all about it. But I think if I look at what's missing in the homesteading world, it's almost like 4-H has this training program where you raise animals on a small scale and they show you how to do all this stuff, right? But what they show you how to do is more of a conventional approach, which isn't terrible. Like, I would totally learn that. But what I want is a week-long training on goat first aid or sheep first aid or cattle first aid and insemination, if that's something you need to do manually, and like all of those things that you would know if you worked on a farm. But if you're new to this and you don't work on a farm, like, how do you learn that stuff other than YouTube right now? What if we had a boot camp for it? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to see how Sheep Day goes and then see, like, is there an opportunity here to bring people in for a weekend training? It won't teach you everything you need to know, but like getting started with sheep, because there are classes you can take, but they're never on the like doing the scary things like poking a hole in that rumen.
Yeah.
And that's like, by the time you're doing that, like, the animal's going to die if you don't do it. And so if you do it wrong, it's a bummer, but like, the animal was going to die anyway. So,
and another, like, talking about resources, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I have a couple of videos up. I'm planning on doing a couple of more videos when I get the time, once I can stop chasing sheep. And then if there's something specific that somebody wants to see, you should email me and tell me that.
yep. And then I guess A. Ray Pierce says Story's Guide to Raising Sheep is another good resource. Hello. Speaking of, poor Dawn's gotten so many text messages from me every time we have a problem because she knows a lot about sheep. So A. Ray Pierce wants to know if rams, when they reach maturity, taste different like chickens do. I think that depends on the breed of animal you get, but when sheep get older, the flavor changes and the mouthfeel changes a little bit. Like, they taste more sheepy. Hair sheep or meat sheep don't have the same flavor as wool sheep either, from what I understand. I raise hair sheep and eat hair sheep. So I have had the other kind of sheep as more of a strong, quote unquote, strong lamb flavor in the ones that produce wool. I will say that. And then most of the stuff you get at the store, I think, is over a year old anyway. And we're processing at 9 months to 12 months with ours right now. So anyway, you guys are all on the sheep today, man. So that's it. It's time for the Million Satoshi giveaway. Who's ready for that? Do you know what that is? So we had 1 million downloads of the audio podcast in September. We're going to pass the 2 million mark pretty soon, but I wanted to do a 1 million Satoshi giveaway. Then I had some very close family members become very, very sick, and I sort of stopped pushing it, and I only had like 3 submissions. So I reopened that in January, and we got more submissions, and today is the day. So what you had to do was find out whichever episode of yours was your favorite, and then share it somewhere, anywhere that you would share it. Email it, tell somebody word of mouth, put it on Facebook, whatever your thing is, do your thing. And a lot of people, like, some people even wrote blog posts about why they liked this. So thank you guys for all of that sharing and entering the Million Satoshi giveaway. What I've done, so I'm not going to say first and last names on this, but what I've done is I have given everybody a number in the spreadsheet. And if you submitted twice, you get 2 different numbers, just FYI. Some people had more than one episode they really liked. It was just 1 episode per submission. And then I have a randomizer. So we're going to go, and I've already, hopefully this will actually work. I tested it this morning. I need to find the random name picker. Random name picker. Oh, I've got to reset it up. It forgot my stuff. So while I'm doing that, you guys can like ask me a question and I'll talk about it. I'm going to stop the share. Tactical's going to tell you about his fencing while I reset this up. I had it all pre-staged, but apparently if you don't hit go, then it stops. So Tactical, what are you doing with fence posts?
So I started with just cedar logs that we were just dropping in the ground because we needed fencing right now. Actually, we needed fencing like a week ago, and so it was just as quick as I could find something suitable for a post, just get it in the ground. Now that I've got time to actually do prep and so forth and so on, I'm basically stripping the logs down to what I want for the post. So getting the bark off, the cambium layer off, charring the post, and then coating it in pine tar. And then I came across a video the other day with some guys that were clearly very professional. They made a passing reference to the fact that there is data saying that concrete actually causes fence posts to rot faster. I have not found a source for any of that kind of data yet, but apparently it exists. So I'm doing some tests with a couple of posts, just putting them in the ground and packing around them. So you basically put a little dirt back in the hole, take something heavy and pack it in. We've got I call it a tank bar. That's a military thing. I don't know what normal people call it, but imagine like a 5-foot crowbar that's perfectly straight, but it's got a round end on one end.
It's made for packing in around posts. Yeah.
And so I'll use that, or I used a 2x2 the other day because it's what I had available.
There's a lot of that around here.
We also have access to rocks. So the one hole that I dug yesterday, I've got a decent sized rock that I'm going to be dropping in behind the support beam so that it has something to push up against. So I'm toying around with that. And then the other problem that we presently have is all of our completed fencing projects where you have like 4 sides and a gate are all occupied at the moment. So the 2 rams are now in with the chickens because it's the only place
they can go. Yeah, and we needed them in hard fence. So he's making a new fence.
So
but don't tell them how. Just say what you're doing.
The closest one to being completed right now is the area around the pond, which needs basically 2 sides. So I got a gate up yesterday, which I salvaged from the what used to be the dividing fence in the pig pasture. And then I'm working on getting the rest of that side done, but rain. And then I've just got to figure out how to do the one side where the pump house is. And then that area will be completely enclosed that will at least hold the sheep. I wouldn't put the goats in there, but goats are very destructive.
Yeah. So that's coming together. And I am now actually ready for the Million Satoshi giveaway. So I hurried him up so that we could actually, have the thing work. Okay, here we go. I'm super thankful that you all have supported me over the years to get us to over the line of 1 million downloads. So thanks for that. And now it's the big moment. I get to spin a wheel. It's not spinning. There we go. Who do you think it's going to be?
I don't know who applied for it.
Okay, number 9. Number 9, you win. Do you know who you are? I don't know who you are. It would really help if I opened the right spreadsheet. Leslie, I'm not saying your last name. Leslie, you win. And I will reach out to you. And that's kind of funny. So her favorite show was the one where she was interviewed. So I am going to say who you are. 3D printing with Brad and Leslie. So that's one from 2020 that we did December 2020, all about 3D printing and how it can change your life. We'll share that out. And that is who won the Million Satoshi giveaway. Woohoo! So now we should do another giveaway. So we are going to do another giveaway. I even know what it is, but we'll talk about that next week. So congratulations, Leslie, on winning the Million Satoshi giveaway. Does that mean the show's over now? It doesn't mean the show's over now, just so you know. Okay, so we were talking about infrastructure. You talked about fencing. What about repairing versus replacing the dishwasher?
Got to figure out what's wrong with it first.
I know that there's only one thing that can be wrong with it. 2 things that can be wrong with it.
Okay.
So, yeah, dishwasher stopped working, and it told me a week ago it was going to stop working. And I am in this place where could I come up with the money for a brand new dishwasher? Yes. Do I want to? No. Is it stupid that dishwashers break? Yes. Are they well built, generally speaking? No. In fact, he found me a video of a guy who recommends more mechanical and less computerized appliances so that they don't break all the time. Well, so that they're repairable when they do break. And you're not just like, oh, I need a $400 motherboard thing. And the guy did dishwashers. And he basically said there's no good option.
Yeah.
But get Bosch. And I'm like, I've had a Bosch. I can kill a Bosch in 2 years with hard water. So we're not getting a Bosch. This one is a GE. And I think it is the switch that senses water level is stuck. That, or my friend told me the solenoid, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's what I got down to is I can tell you the solenoid is not opening. I don't know why it's not opening, but it's not.
So I think we're going to go down the laborious path of repairing the dishwasher. And until then, guess what gets to happen at my house? Yeah, that's avoidance right there. The dishwashers are the 2 people you see looking at you from the screen. And I will tell you which one did more dishes yesterday. That's okay. You do more of the animals. So anyway, we're hand washing everything. It ain't that bad, actually. The one thing about homesteading, I was thinking about this with the Resilient Kitchen presentation that Alan Booker is doing at Self-Reliance Festival. I do dishes all the bloody time here because the food that we are producing from the homestead requires more interaction than something you pull out of a box, but it's way healthier. And I'm literally, okay, I made butter. The blender has to be cleaned. The spatula has to be cleaned. I put it in a bowl. I made a mess on the counter. That has to be cleaned. The container that the cream came out of has to be cleaned. The bowl that I had the ice water in has to be cleaned. Every project has that scale, but it is what it is. DFW says, I hate washing dishes. I actually used to hate washing dishes. Now I don't hate it. I'm it just is. It's like doing laundry. It's a constant thing in your life. And if you make space for it, it works better. That's something I've really been playing with is what processes aren't working and have I made space for them? Space in the system. And, I have a tendency to pile up paperwork. That's because I don't have I realize I have a paperwork system, but I don't have an effective paperwork system. And so now I've stepped back and I'm this system is going to be different so that things go all the way away where they need to go, because a lot of times things don't go away because they don't have a place in my house. And the more I have space for them, the more I do. Like with laundry, that just all it took was me reducing the total number of clothes I had so that laundry gets done and everything goes back into where it goes. And there's room for all of that. And it's not like I'm squishing things into the drawers or whatever. And then I had to redefine laundry being complete from washer and dryer happened, which for an ADHD person can be like a big win that you got it in the dryer without having to wash it a second time. But actually, laundry is not done till they're all the way away. And when you define it that way, you can't mark it off your list until they're all the way away and then sitting there looking at you until you do it. And that actually, like having that process for me made the difference between Laundry Mountain on the couch and not Laundry Mountain on the couch. I'm not saying Laundry Mountain never happens. I'm just saying it's a lot rarer now that I have that system. So I realized I need to do that for paperwork. And then so if you don't have that for dishes yet, that start thinking about what do you have in place to wash your dishes. Because when I go to my friends' houses in Europe, they have some serious stuff in place for hand washing dishes. They have these complex drying racks and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty cool. So we can learn from that, guys. We can learn from that. Anyway, so I am now the dishwasher, and he's the dishwasher backup. You're the dishwasher adjunct. Mm-hmm. I think he glared at his plate while he was cleaning it after dinner last night.
You do understand that I don't even have a dishwasher, so everything that I use in the cabin gets washed by hand.
Yeah.
Like all of it.
Yep.
Even if I had a dishwasher in the cabin, I still wouldn't use it. I would still be washing by hand because I don't generate enough dishes to fill up a dishwasher. I don't even know if I own enough dishes to fill up a dishwasher. Now that I think about
you could own enough dishes to fill up a dishwasher.
I don't have a need for that many dishes.
Minimalist, right? Hey, Ray Pierce says paper plates so you can compost them later. I'm not going to say that never happens here because that's one of the funniest, most unexpected answers to questions I had on an interview with John Moody when I'm like, what advice would you give to a new homesteader? And he said, it's okay to use paper plates. I was like, what? And then he explained, like, you can compost paper plates. Sometimes you're so busy in your kitchen that the paper plate going straight into the compost is a way better choice with your time than doing all the dishes. And so I was like, I just remembered like, that's not what I thought was going to come out of his mouth, but that is 100% what came out of his mouth. Okay, we're down to our last segment for today's show. If you have any questions you want answered before we sign off, just put them in all caps in the comments. And guys, if you are listening to this on the audio podcast and ever want to get a question into this show, send it to me via email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. Our last segment of today is finances. And I'm not reporting on a specific thing financially, but I wanted to talk about the mindset of homesteading and finances. Because I come at, like, when I asked Tactical what his goal with the sheep was, and he said to replace food, I realized that the financial goal for him, for the sheep, is not to make any money on them. If he makes money on them, I'm sure he won't be sad. But he's looking like, how do I make the property pay for itself and support life? Rather than how do I make a lot of money on that? And I think if I think about most of our homestead projects, we frame most of the financial goals of them in terms of like either making our lives better or not needing to buy food or other things that we're generating here. And it's not about generating profit. And for us, what that means is the scale of the project is smaller, like we're not scaling up. But what if you want to flow into the homestead lifestyle, be able to live rurally and not have to work a day job? Do you think that's possible?
I can tell you it's possible because there's people that do it.
How would that be possible here, do you think, for you?
I think some of the side projects that I do could be more income. And then, like, one of my goals with the sheep is to have enough that they at least pay for their existence. So to be able to have enough of a surplus to sell to pay for the new fence charger that I just bought.
That's not a living.
No, it's not a living, but that, I mean, I think it's like, if you listen to anybody like you or Spearco or Willis, when you start talking about side hustles, everybody's gonna say some variation of, don't try to make $100,000 the first year. Let's start by paying for your cell phone bill. Like, if I can get the sheep to where I'm not spending any money on the sheep, then anything else I do is strictly income. Whereas if I build this book and I sell it, that money's going to the sheep because I need a new fence charger. So for me, it's starting with just getting everything to a net zero, I guess.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot because I think there's a couple of different schools of thoughts out in the homesteading world, and I'm not sure any of them are wrong. So I'm just going to talk about different schools of thought. And one of them is sort of the scrap steading, where you reuse everything and you don't put any monetary inputs in as much as you can. And that approach absolutely works. Like, we had the author of that book on this show last week talking about it, right? Matt Hundley. And for some reason, his name was not coming up. I'm like, I see his face. So Matt was on, and he said on that show, like, sometimes it is actually pretty nice to be able to just buy the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened as he's gone through the years of scrap steading, where he spent no money but was able to replace his food, is he has ended up coming up with a homestead-based business that's making some money. And now he has the extra room in his budget to sometimes buy the right solution that he doesn't have to make. And what he is seeing now is, okay, so because I didn't spend 6 hours making whatever that I was able to buy, I can spend 6 hours on my homestead business and make more than enough money to pay for the thing, which is a mindset change. And I'm talking about it because it's a mindset change. So it is not wrong to scrap stead, by the way. It is not wrong to figure out, do I fix the dishwasher, or do I replace the dishwasher, or do I go find a used dishwasher, or do I just not have a dishwasher, right? Because if you don't have a dishwasher, then you don't have to fix the dishwasher. But then you kind of get into this middle area where you have a homestead business that pays for the homestead, and a lot of homesteaders just sort of end right there. Some of them have like $10,000 that are coming off that business a year. And often $10,000 a year is not, even though you've replaced your food, it's not enough to pay the other things that we currently pay for ourselves in the world. Like, people usually get health insurance or a health share. They want to have vehicles, and many people have a mortgage in order to have a homestead. Like, there's lots of things, and you can kind of work both sides of that, where, like, the less things you have to pay for every month, the less money you need to pay for them. So that can be nice. But then we go from that $10,000 a year level to $40,000 to $60,000 or more. The people I know who achieve $40,000 to $60,000 or more a year, which is basically a pretty good living, even now with inflation, that's a pretty good living. Some people would argue with me because they'll be like, I can only buy a house for $400,000. I'm like, yeah, you live in a house that's costs $400,000. I get it. Like, you need more money for that if you're going to make that choice, but that is a choice. But I would say $40,000 to $60,000 is still a decent living. They've done things like market garden with CSA subscriptions, or they've done microgreens, and they work with restaurants, or hollow roast coffee, and they ship coffee all over the country, right? There's always this like bigger time consuming thing. And on the homestead, if you're going to live rurally away from where the best paying jobs are, which are often in the city, and you don't have a remote work situation, and you really want to go full time, you have to look at how am I going to generate cash somehow. And a lot of people try YouTube channels and other things, and content creation is definitely a way you can do that, but you have to leverage it better than I have. I would say that, like, the most of my money comes off Hollow Roast coffee, period, end of story. And as I'm looking at how, like, my mindset's different than his on the homestead right now from a financial standpoint. I want us to be at that $10,000 level with something besides the coffee. Look, the coffee's above that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, something from here is like, okay, it does not hurt my feelings to have that extra profit. And that's after paying for things. When I look at the sheep, they're never going to get us there unless we go way bigger with the sheep. We don't want to go bigger with the sheep, right? So I'm starting to just think about that as we look around the homestead. I'm sharing this with y'all because some of you have started a homestead. Some of you want a homestead. Some of you are way beyond me in your ability to make your homestead work for you. But it's all part of the community, and we're all at different places in that mindset journey. And some of us will always stay at the scrap studying place because we like it there. We like figuring out how to make pallets work for everything under the sun because we can source them for free, right? Nothing wrong with that. That's actually a perfectly awesome choice for building the life you choose. The key is that you choose. And I think as you get into homesteading and go further along, you want to be strategic about your mindset about money from the homestead and what you're looking to get out of it. Because if you're not, and you aren't strategic about it, you're going to end up wherever society pushes you. And usually society doesn't push you to the right place. So those are my thoughts. What do you think when you hear all that?
Yeah. And I mean, just to, what's the word I'm looking for? Elaborate on the point that, like, where she's at with the homestead is different than where I'm at. She's been here longer. Like, my goals are relatively new compared to yours. So just to further illustrate that point.
Yeah, it's a push-pull for sure. Having a partner in a homestead is definitely more communication and a different thing, but it's also a force multiplier. So,
yeah,
and he may not be wrong. Like, my primary goal for living this lifestyle is I like this lifestyle. It's not how can I make $60,000 off my homestead. I have a 3-acre homestead. Would it be possible with a market garden to make a decent amount of money relatively quickly? Yeah, especially with the the farmers going out of business in my county. Oh my word. Like, all the time. It's like, oh, another one retired, right? So there's definitely an opening there. Is that where I want to put my energy though? No. I mean, I really like roasting coffee. I love doing the podcast. I love doing the webinars. I love speaking. And this life enables me to do that, but it's happening currently at the cost of not maximizing income. And that's okay because I'm working on maximizing happiness and, other things. But I'm not going to say that money isn't also important. So money definitely helps when I'm out of town and we can afford to have somebody in to help you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, those are just my thoughts as we get to the end of today's show. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, obviously the number one place I make money is Hollow Roast Coffee. So consider getting your coffee at Hollow Roast if you want to start your day in luxury. I roast everything to order, or Michelle roasts it sometimes. She actually was out here yesterday roasting it because I'm trying a new experiment, which I'm super excited about. Anyway, with that, guys, go out,